where we highlight the journeys of successful young leaders.
One pedal after another, one pedal after another. Then I was telling him, say, I'm scared, I'm going to fall, I'll hate myself. And he told me to say, that's the way you have to go about it. Innovation in government systems can be frustrating. It's always frustrating. The red step is not for the young people. It's about investing. First, you have to invest in yourself. You have to invest in the books you read. It's about focusing on what you want, like having a clear vision to say, this is where you want to go. And even before it happens, you'd have already created it in your mind. Young people must learn to tell their story with the authenticity it deserves. And secondly, to follow positive vibes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Joyce Masvaya, and welcome to Dear Future Leaders, a youth empowerment hub where we help young people to grow and thrive. Today we have Felix. Felix, hello. Welcome to Dear Future Leaders.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm so excited.
Awesome. Your story is remarkable, from your work with Ministry of Health Zambia to developing the award-winning innovation OpsCan and earning multiple national awards, including the Presidential Innovation Recognition Award. You have proven that science, faith, and innovation can come together to change lives. And today, we want to unpack how you do it, what drives your creativity, and how other people can follow in your footsteps. So let's dive in. We are going to start with your background, your journey, and inspiration. Felix, take us back to the beginning. What inspired you to start innovating in healthcare, and where does the passion for creating solutions come from? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Like you've earlier introduced me, my name is Felix Kangwa. I come from a beautiful land known as Zambia. In Zambia, we have like one of the 7 natural wonders of the world, and I call myself the 8th world wonder, mainly because I make people happy. Yes. Coming back to the question of what really inspired me to like get into innovation for healthcare and seriously diving into it. Firstly, my story did not firstly begin in the lab, like maybe many of other people. And I wasn't like a fantasy when it comes to science, innovation, when it comes into like primary school, mainly because I saw myself as a social scientist. I would be everywhere where conversations would happen and everywhere where everyone would have the fun, like mainly because of my energy. But drawing back to maybe one of the critical issues is when we visited public healthcare facilities growing up as a child with my mother. One of the most remarkable moments was when I was bitten by a dog, and frustratingly enough, we couldn't find where we could get anti-rabies, which was actually affordable. And we were told to say we could only get it out of town and it would cost us at least $50. So then began the questions, because curiosity is one thing which I hold the most. I always ask questions to say, how can this be done differently? And through observation and refining everything, asking on how things have been done, on what things were done in the past, and seeing on how best it could be done for the betterment of the future. I feel that's what drives me. It's curiosity and asking the questions and ensuring that even though we innovate for the people we're innovating for, we shouldn't innovate because we are feeling nice about the phrase innovation. We should innovate for things which really work for the people on the ground.
That's a different experience you had there. And also, it's always good to understand that when you see gaps, you need to cover them. For example, you actually saw that there was a gap in healthcare and you thought about it and how you could cover up for that gap. Thank you so much. So let's move to the next question. You often mention the God factor when you talk about your journey. How has faith shaped the way you approach innovation and leadership?
Great. The God factor. Firstly, to start with, I'm a Christian by faith. And one of my favorite Bible verses is Psalm chapter 46, verse 10. It says to say, be still, for I know that I am God. And equally in the same book of Psalms, which is Psalms 37, verse 4, it tells us to say, delight in the Lord and he'll give you the desires of your heart. I've always been a person who really wants to lead, and I've always led in every capacity I've been given. And I've led exceptionally well, despite of my age, despite my experience, because I believe to say, even when I'm given the opportunity to lead, to innovate, and to do everything else, I have to be still and I have to let God live in me. Then I will do exceptionally well, because it's only through Him that I am able to do all these things. So I really believe in God, that every inspiration I get, everything I get to do, and every journey I get to move, I move with faith in Him. And the God factor has, it's been exceptionally well, and it's helped me to mainly focus on things which matter the most. Many are the times when we really get stressed as human beings. I was speaking to a friend the other day and telling me to say he has got a lot of things on the table, but there's only as much as a human being can do. I often say science is natural, but God is supernatural. And because God is supernatural, He then controls science and controls everything which lives around this earth. So it's about God, to let God lead and help us just follow through His footsteps, because He's shown us to say, be still, for He is definitely God.
It also reminds me of this verse that says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, which means you can actually do more than you can imagine with God on your side. Thank you so much. Let's move to entrepreneurship and innovation. You have developed groundbreaking tools that you mentioned above. Most recently, Trust AI. How do these ideas usually come to you? What's your creative or a problem-solving process like?
Innovation, firstly, to start with, is not a one-man show. That's one thing people must learn. You must be ready to collaborate. People in the tech area, people in engineering, people in healthcare, people in the labs, and everyone else, and including the people you want to solve the problem for. And these are the people on the ground. They must be heavily involved in designing these tools. So it goes back. Mainly, the biggest question you are asking, who am I solving this problem for? Because if you're just solving a problem because you think it's a problem, maybe it's only a problem at your place. But if it's a problem which is a global problem, it has to get you back and get on the ground to ensure that you do all necessary research. So it has to go back to the questions, but why is this happening this way? How about if we try it this way? Then, after you get through all the ideation process, you will then go back and start testing your ideas to see if they actually do really refine. And my biggest principle when it comes to implementing things is not implementing one of the most novel things. Implementing easy to implement ideas, but have the highest impact. Because in as much as you are innovating whatever you're innovating, you want your ideas and actually your products to have the greatest impact because you're innovating them for humankind. For example, you earlier mentioned about Trust AI. This is a simple tool which helps countries help verify in terms of biological threats. This is one of the innovations which we worked together. Like I said, it's not a one-man show, with other professionals from the global south, which that's Jordan, Iraq, Uzbekistan, and many other wonderful young people we've worked together with. Because we believe to say, if countries are able to verify these biological threats, then we are creating a safer generation, we are creating a safer world. So it's going back to the people, and the people themselves actually tell you to say, yes, indeed, this is a very big challenge. And if they actually tell you to say it's not a big challenge, you could still continue doing the traditional way, because you don't want to create something which is, at the end of the day, is just going to be one of those dark horses. And if you're not creating it for the people, please stop. There is no harm in pivoting. There is no harm in pivoting, because once you pivot, you definitely find what you really need to solve.
I agree with you so much. There's this saying that says, if you want to go far, go with others. So I agree. Collaboration is the way to go. So let's move to the next question. I'm also very curious. What's your approach to identifying real gaps in healthcare and then design tech solutions that are practical in low resource settings? I think we have touched on this one as well, but maybe you might want to give us more information on how you do it.
Okay, great. Data is king. I always say that. Numbers don't lie. Where there is definitely something which has to be solved. So firstly, it has to start with how practical are we in ensuring that we keep our data safe? Who is in charge of our data? We get the data in the low resource settings. Are the people who give us this data able to access this data and create solutions from themselves? So it all goes back to us getting our real data on the ground. So my basic practical term in creating these solutions is solutions should never come from the top. They should always come from the bottom, because these are the people who know, for example, the patient flow chart. When a patient moves from this area end, they get to the next end, because all they want to do is to make the work be done, firstly, and secondly, to ensure that patients get better. Trust me, when you get into any hospital settings, patients don't care whatever innovation you've used from the first to the end. All they care about is them getting better. And even the relatives and everyone else, even when they're stressing, when you tell them to say, oh no, we use in the electronic health records here, we are storing your data here. Trust me, they don't actually care. What they care about is their relative okay. So if patients don't care about what you use to help them get better, then equally, the people who implement these ideas on the ground just want easy to implement things. So they go back to the data, they start solving the problems there, and they start asking the questions to say, okay, if it's a gap in maybe identifying our TB cases, how then best can we help increase maybe the number of presumptives we send to the lab? So it still goes back to the design settings. If you don't involve the people you are solving the problem for, then you are solving it for no one, because the people and the data on the ground are the most important people in the innovation landscape. Even when you talk about, for example, in the mobile money landscape, we use different networks and things like that. They test these innovations on us and we do give feedback. And sometimes we see them revert to the old style of how they've been doing things. They literally don't force them on the people. Because if you force them, then you are disrupting something which doesn't need disruption and probably is just working so well.
Yeah, I agree with you, because most of the time, even if when it comes to youth empowerment programs and every other thing, they actually say nothing for us without us. So we can't be innovating and creating solutions for patients without involving them. So I do agree with you. The bottom up approach is very important when innovating. So let's move on to the next question. Many young innovators have amazing ideas, but they get stuck turning them into something tangible. How do you personally move from concept to impact? I know you have explained as well, you talked about data, you talked about the bottom-up approach involving the people that you want to create the solution for. But do you have any other ideas as well of how a young person who also is also willing to become an innovator one of these days, how can they move from the ideation stage to creating impact like you do?
Great. I love that question. One day, I actually just asked my dad to say, I want to learn how to ride a bike. And this very day, he just told me and gave me the bike and told me to say, start riding. Then I asked him, how do you do? Then tell myself, I'm a firm believer in speaking things into existence, even before they happen. I believe that mainly because I have faith in God, like I told you. Most of the things which I have happened in my life, I have spoken about them. Like sometimes it can be 2 months before, sometimes it could be years. And when they get to happen, I even get surprised to say this. I spoke about this some years back. Now, what I think stands out for me is I tell my story without shame. I talk about myself. I come from a rural area and I talk about it with a lot of pride. I don't talk about this story of coming from a rural area mainly to ask for sympathy. No, 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 no. My family has already given me the sympathy I need and I've already moved out of that phase. I don't speak about it. I need people to pity party me. No, I don't need anyone to pity party me because I firmly believe to say even without the government systems in place, definitely my idea thrive and will take over the world. That's one point. So it's about storytelling skills. And secondly, it's about investing. Firstly, you have to invest in yourself. You have to invest in the books you read. You have to invest in the people you listen to. Because some young people, for example, in my country, in Zambia, they would invest with a lot of negativity. There's a lot of negativity when you get online. For example, there are certain platforms, which maybe I couldn't mention right now, which have like a lot of negativity. The moment you open it, it's very rare for you to find something positive. But when you get on the other side, for example, I'll be a very proud brand ambassador for LinkedIn. Immediately you open LinkedIn, you would find great positivity. You would find people doing great things, people getting to the next level. And this is actually what drives me. I was having a conversation, I think 2 days ago with my dad. I was telling him to say, there are a lot of young people with PhDs and I really want to get a PhD. Then we started laughing about it. Then he said, why did you say them? I'm like, on LinkedIn. Then he tells me to say, this is actually giving you a very positive impact on your life. So it's about focusing on what you want, like having a clear vision to say, this is where you want to go. And even before it happened, you'd have already created it in your mind. So young people, must learn to tell their story with the authenticity it deserves. And secondly, to follow positive vibes. There are a lot of people who I could point out. For example, yourself, Joyce, you're doing amazing things, and many more young people out there who actually create the impact.
Let's move on to youth empowerment and vision. You have mentored other young innovators through the Hack for Earth and similar programs. What advice would you give to a young person who has a passion but feels they lack resources or connections to start? Yes, you mentioned that start with what you have, where you are. You gave that example of you riding a bicycle, but maybe there are other solutions that you have also given to these young innovators through the Hack for Earth. You might want to share with them with the rest of the young people that will see this interview.
Great. Thank you. So one of the best things which has happened, for example, in the first century is the access to connectivity and the internet. I think it's been one of the greatest innovations which is not highly spoken about. And I believe to say this tool, which we call the internet, it could have its own disadvantages. However, I always tell young people to create their own hub of opportunities. For example, when you get to your Facebook, there are a lot of pages which actually share opportunities, which help young people move from ideation to concept stage. And there are a lot of people who are just willing to support young people. But the biggest challenge I find with young people is they don't want to put in the work, firstly. Even when they've been shared with an opportunity, they want maybe the application process to be started on their behalf until the end. It doesn't work like that. So follow the right pages. And for example, this is what I do. I see you have an opportunity. Maybe you've attended a conference, you've attended a fellowship program, you've gotten a scholarship, you're into school, and that's something which I want maybe in the next phase, right? Firstly, I'm not ashamed to ask for people who've gone ahead of me. And secondly, what do I do? I'll go to that same page and I'll follow it. I know to say this phase has passed, right? It's okay. I'll definitely wait for the next application window. And God forbid it's the last time they are putting out such a call. I'll look for other similar calls because it's not only one organization, it's not only the UN, it's not only the African Union, it's not only incubation hubs which are pushing for young people to get forward. And the biggest challenge is if the only qualification we present on the table is being young without skills, without the willingness to learn, then we'll definitely fail ourselves. Because being a youth or young person ends at 35. Then after 35, what are we going to do about it? So we should continuously build ourselves as we look for the opportunities and follow the right people in the right pages. Definitely, no one will stop us. No one.
Thank you so much. I agree with you. There's no harm in asking someone for help. There's no harm in just typing that message and just sending, can you please help me? Can you mentor me? People out there are willing to help. Yes, you might get a no, but you will not die because you got a no. Actually, if you get a yes, that's a positive thing for you. So I agree with you. There's no harm in trying and reaching out. Like you say, the internet is the best thing that has happened to us. So let's move on to the next question. As someone helping shape Zambia's health future, what's your vision for how young people can drive Africa's next wave of healthcare innovation? And finally, in this section, what would you say to a young person or a young African watching this who feels like their dreams are too big or too far away?
Okay. I'll start firstly with driving the healthcare of Zambia forward. Firstly, I'm very excited, and I'm so sure many African youths will listen to this interview. African Youth CDC has introduced the YES strategy, which is the youth engagement strategy, which helps young people be at the center of the healthcare. So one thing I believe is that, like you mentioned this earlier, to say nothing to us without us. And most often young people say, if there is no table, we'll create the table and take it there. But the biggest truth is the best way to influence healthcare, because this is not child's play, is we need the older experience and the energetic young mind. We have professors, we have old innovators, we have the older generation and ourselves. We get to learn from them and blend it through. And firstly, we must not wait for decades for us to implement our ideas. We have research papers which have stayed in the labs for over a decade and over a century. That's something we must speak against, because these solutions will not only work for Africa or Zambia, but they work for the world at large. We need to move from only research but to implementation. Please, if there's anyone listening to me right now, let's start implementing those ideas right now, because we really need them right now. Driving Africa's healthcare system has to go down to the frameworks and the policies we have in place. Young people are supposed to learn, speak about it, and ensure that their governments implement this strategy. It's about holding governments accountable. For example, I've always said this: healthcare is a democracy issue. So the leaders we put in place and the amount of pressure we put on them ensures that our healthcare system becomes better. The policies they make when it comes to healthcare determines how best our healthcare is going to be. Young people need to learn to go on the ground and hold leaders accountable. And secondly, start innovating and start bringing the ideas to test, because no one is going to come to solve our problems. No one is going to solve this problem for us unless we step up and solve it ourselves, because we know what we go through, we know the pains we go through, and for us to solve it better, it only needs ourselves to be on the table. I think that's my take.
What would you say to a young person watching this who feels like their dreams are too big or too far away?
Dear future leader, this is the right platform where young people get to show you that definitely dreams do come true. They might not be where you think they must be, but definitely starting, listening, and knowing to say there are actually young people who are daring to become in the continent is nothing small. So let's start. We shall work together, because none of us are there. But when we work together, we will show the world that definitely we are stronger together.
You have won 5 national awards, led tech projects, inspired so many young people. What's the one core principle that guided you through all of that?
Believing in yourself. You're not too young to change the world, firstly. You can be the youngest in the room, but your ideas are the most bold, and they could actually change every sector of the world. So believing in yourself and daring to dream, I think those are the biggest things.
When things get hard or recognition doesn't come, what advice would you give to that young innovator who feels unseen or under-supported? You mentioned about believing in yourself and also just having that conviction in yourself that you can do this, right? But what other ideas can you give young people to say, even if you don't find the recognition that you need, even if you don't feel supported, what is that one thing that you can do to keep moving?
Great. I love that question. And I think one part which might have missed in that question is, even when you lose, like there are times when you lose, understand to say is that most of the time people only share the rosy part of their journey. And so it takes time. It takes a lot of faith. It takes a lot of conviction for you to actually get there. Sometimes recognition might not come from the top authorities, right? Sometimes the recognition doesn't come from the organizations we envision. Sometimes it doesn't come from the president of your country. Sometimes it doesn't come from the minister or your supervisor at work. The recognition mainly comes from the people you are changing lives for. So the focus mainly shouldn't be who sees or who recognizes you. I think when I started looking at it differently, when I was doing things that people were not seeing, I was getting frustrated. But when I started realizing to say it's about the God bless you, my son, at your rural clinic, it's about may God multiply your life. Thank you so much for saving my life. Thank you for the work you continuously do. That's where the real recognition comes from. Because real change doesn't happen in the boardroom. Real change happens on the ground, because the people on the ground really need your services more than the people in the boardrooms.
What does true innovation mean to you?
Okay. So just to add on that, like I said, real lives are not changed in the boardroom or in parliament where policy is being made. They are changed on the ground where the real lives are being touched.
Thank you so much. I agree with you. Change do happen in communities, not in boardrooms, not in parliaments. So yes, that's so true. Felix, your journey is such a powerful reminder that innovation isn't just about technology. It's about faith, humility, and the courage to act on your vision. Thank you so much for inspiring a generation of young African leaders and young leaders from all over the world. to believe that their ideas can truly change lives. It was an honor to have you here on Dear Future Leaders. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. See you in Geneva at the World Health Organization.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for watching Dear Future Leaders channel. Don't forget to like, comment and share.